Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for November 15, 2024. We're going to be doing the Thursday thoughts for the Week 11 NFL picks against the spread for the 2024 NFL season. Before we intro our co-host tonight, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see here at the merch store, we have a 20% off sale. We have a bunch of new shirts here, and we're going to have a brand new shirt on Saturday. I just designed it today. I love the logo. I think you guys are going to like it a lot too. So usually takes like about 48 hours for it to be approved. So you'll be able to see it on Saturday's show. Going to have some new mugs as well. And of course, I'm wearing a Walter Football navy blue shirt here, which you can get here. You can choose whichever color you want. So it has green here. You can pick like orange or pink or red or black or white. You could do whatever. It's really cool how the site does it. So again, link is in the description. Also, please consider super chats, super stickers. Past couple of days, we have John Sanders, Slew, Can't Make an Eagle, helping out a lot here. I always say that these YouTube ads pay absolutely nothing. So if you guys want to help contribute, that would be really appreciated. Also, please consider going to Amazon, buying my books. Jerks of the College Years is the latest one. It basically just funny stories about my time at Penn State. I spent 6 years at Penn State, so as you can imagine, I ran into very strange people there over the years. Also, how the 2020 MVP was stolen. So it's about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers 4 years ago, even though Brett Favre was out of the league. It's an expose I wrote, so I think you guys might enjoy it if you haven't heard the story. But we are joined tonight by Andy Iskoe from thelogicalapproach.com, as you can see on the screen here. Andy, how are you, and how's your Week 10?
I'm doing fine, Walt. As we were talking before the show, perplexed by a decision that was not made tonight in the Washington-Philadelphia game, which should have cost me a first half teaser win with Washington, but that late touchdown and the all-important 2-point conversion made the final score 8. But it should never have come to that. It might have come to something like that anyway, but aside from that, it's been a very good week. Week 10 was very good for me in the NFL, and hopefully it'll carry over to this week. Of course, the games become more meaningful. The game tonight between Washington and Philadelphia, the battle for first place in the NFC East, made it a little bit more important to Philadelphia because it was a home game. Okay, and you want to win your divisional games at home, and of course it would have thrown them a game and a half behind Washington had they lost, and then they'd still have to play at Washington. But a nice one for the Eagles, who, and I think I may have remarked about it last week, or I know I did on some of the shows I did earlier this week, that Eagles seem to be doing the reverse of what they did last year when they got off to that huge start and then lost 6 out of 7 down the stretch and an ugly exit to Tampa Bay in the playoffs. Well, this year they didn't look all that good for the first month and a half of the season, but the last 4 weeks or so, they've looked as good as any team in the league, not named Detroit. And this may be the year where they're able to finish things. Although they're probably surprised, as everybody is, that their main competition, their main challenge in the division, is coming not from Dallas but from Washington.
Yeah, well, Dallas, we'll talk about them much later. Feels like the bottom is falling out for them. The Eagles have been on a roll. They won 6 in a row following that 2-2 start. They had injuries. AJ Brown was out for a couple of games. They didn't have Devontae Smith for a couple of games, game and a half. They didn't have Lane Johnson for 2 games. And I think the biggest difference this year is the 2 coordinators. Big upgrade that they got on the coaching staff, and that's definitely had a big impact for them so far.
Yeah, I think maybe that second half against Cincinnati may have been maybe you may look back on that as what really keyed the Eagles' resurgence, because that was a tough game in Cincinnati. It was obviously an important game for both teams, but a critical game for Cincinnati, as it was a home game and it was a tied game at halftime, and then Philadelphia showed up in the second half, and Cincinnati did not, and really they played very, very well since then. And this is a team that, they certainly have the talent. Defense showing some signs of improvement. Still some issues there, but the offense looks very good. And at the top, I can't think off the top of my head, but what better off-season acquisition was made than Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, Barkley was great. We had his over 92.5 rushing yards. Suicide Trump won. Lefty's crying. Walter Football, same game parlay hits. Life is great. Yeah, we hit our same game parlay tonight. We had Saquon Barkley over 92.5 rushing yards. We had Dallas Goedert over 33.5 receiving yards. We had Zach Ertz over 33.5 receiving yards, and we had AJ Brown under 5.5 receptions.
And I don't think Hurts didn't throw for an awful lot of yards overall as
yeah.
far as that goes. What do you have? I think 221, maybe something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like, yeah, it was actually. I think a lot of people were surprised by how low scoring the game was. You know, the total I believe was 49, and I think most people expected over. But if you look at EPA rankings, the Eagles are first in defense, Washington third in defense. So I mean, these were two top three defenses, which, you know, Eagles, I'm not surprised with, you know, Fangio and all that talent, but Washington's their defense has been great this year. Although Dan Quinn, I guess maybe not too much of a surprise, but given how many points they allowed last year, I didn't think they'd have this much.
Even that first game in Tampa Bay, Quinn's first game as coach, where they gave 37 to the Buccaneers, and they've shown steady improvement. We'll talk about it whenever we feel like it. But the curious decision that he made tonight at a critical point in the game, which Washington, they played Dallas and then they played Tennessee, and then they have their bye week. And I could argue that if Washington goes into a little slump, the decision that was not made tonight might end up having been the turning point for their season. They were, they might have still lost the game, but the decision they made that, and I guess we can mention right now is the decision when they're down in the fourth quarter, about 8 minutes to go for it on fourth down by 2, instead of kicking the field goal to go up by 1 and forcing the Eagles to at least score a field goal or something. Now, they were moving the ball, but make them do it at least. The point is, if they were down by 1, I could understand it. If they may have thought they had a free opportunity because Philadelphia missed the extra point on their touchdown that made it 12-10. But if it had been 11-10, let's say, or 13-12 Philadelphia, then you can go for it, because even if you miss and they score a touchdown, you're only down by 8, so you'd still have a chance to come back. But I'm still in favor of, in what had been a low-scoring game to that point, 12-10, and not that many possessions left with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, if you've got a chance to take the lead, I take the lead. Now, I don't know if it would have been like a 45, 48-yard field goal, 43-yard field goal, whatever it may have been, because I don't recall exactly, because, as I said to you, I was doing a show, so I couldn't really watch the game and concentrate at the same time. But I would have wanted to know, what's the league average from roughly that distance, within, 2 to 3 yards either way, and what's his average, although it is a backup kicker that was forced into because of injury, that might have justified the decision. But I still say, and I don't know what the analytics say on that one, and even if they say it was the right decision, I know math, and I know that from down 2 to +1 is a situation you'd like to be in. No guarantee you make it. And also, there's no guarantee that if you make it on fourth down, you're going to be in position to score, or that you even will score on that drive. And in the meantime, the clock is running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think you can. So I think I would have kicked as well, but I think you can defend it a little bit by the backup kicker thing you just mentioned. Maybe they just didn't trust Zane Gonzalez in that moment, and if they had Austin Seibert still, maybe they
did he make 1 or 2 earlier in the game? I think he was 1 for 1 in the game.
He hit 1, because it was 10. It was 10. What, 3 at halftime or 10-6 at halftime?
Yeah.
And so he hit
what it was.
Yeah. So he hit field goal, and he hit some kicks last week. So it's not like he was doing poorly. It's not like he was Jake Moody or anything. So he was.
It's a 45-yard field goal in the second quarter.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe they just didn't trust their backup kicker. Also, I think one thing is that, given the new kickoff rules, you start at the 30 instead of the 25, and really you only need 25 yards to get into field goal range. It's just so much easier for teams to kick field goals these days. So those two combined, like I can understand the decision, but I still think you have to go for the lead.
Well, again, if the score's 34-30 or 34-32 or whatever, and you're down by 2, and you've seen all these points being scored by both teams, then you probably do it. But when you have an opportunity to take the lead, and you know that at most in normal circumstances, Philadelphia is going to get maybe 2 more possessions, you might get 1 more possession that you want to at least have the opportunity to at least force Philadelphia to go down and score, rather than have them play with the lead. And the way Barkley runs the football, there's it'd take a long drive, but there's no reason to think that Philadelphia couldn't run the clock out over the last 7-8 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I mean, they've done that a lot. So Yeah, I just I would have kicked, but I get the defense of it. Although we were talking about it before we started recording. It was like any time that happens, someone will say, "Oh, the analytics say it was the right move," and it's like, well, I feel like you can say that about anything. You get caught cheating on your girlfriend. It's like, oh, the analytics said it was the right move.
Yeah.
You just keep saying that.
Well, and I've always said excuse me, analytics are a guide, not a Bible.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
because remember, they may say, yeah, well, it's going to be a 57% chance of being successful. That's great, but you know what? On this next kick, it's either going to be 0% or 100%. You've got to take into other factors. You're playing outdoor, like the wind, for example, might equate things. The analytics. The problem with analytics or statistics sometimes in general. I'm a big believer in both, but I use them, I think, properly. Because I don't rely on them all the time, but I want to get a sense of what they say. But you also have to take them within context. But the problem is, the more parameters you put, the smaller the database that fits that parameter. So, but at some point, it's also down and distance, they always say, should affect a lot of situations. Even 2-point conversions, they rely a little bit, but a 2-point, going for 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter is a lot different than going for 4th and 1 in the second quarter. Yeah. The analytics may say overall, you've got a 52.3% chance, just like betting, of making it on 4th and 1, let's say. But it depends. What kind of defense are you going up against? How have you done on those types of situations in the past? So you can't just randomly pick and choose. Well, the analytics say this without knowing the context in which the analytics are derived or from which they are derived, so that you can say, oh, okay, now I can understand. They are in a favorable situation in which they've succeeded before, rather than a general situation that applies to every team.
Yeah, I do think you have to look at the analytics, like you said, use it as a guide. And if it says like you're 80% to win in this situation, you should probably do it. But if it's like, oh, you're 53% to win in this situation, maybe you think, oh, well, the circumstances are a little bit different. I have a backup kicker, etc. Like stuff like that can change things. But
well, it's always a situation of having to equate risk and reward. And it's a situation I think we talked about last week, going for 2 at the end of the game rather than accepting a tie. Okay? Mm-hmm. If you go for it and you make it, you win the game. If you go for it and you miss it, you lose the game. If it's like last half minute, you're not going to see the ball again. If you go and kick the extra point and accept the tie, that's not a fatal decision. You still have an opportunity to win, even against Kansas City. Now, it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to win the coin flip, and less than that you're going to get a touchdown. But at least you have an opportunity. Yes, you have the opportunity to win, but is a loss better than a tie? No, I think a tie is better than a loss, especially, as I think I mentioned, when it comes down to tiebreakers at the end of the season. So you have to, you get if you go for overtime, you get to live another day. Yeah, you had an opportunity to win the game, but you still have an opportunity to win the game. Okay. Yeah. On the other hand, if you miss, you turned a possible tie, if it's tied after 10 minutes, into a definite loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But thank you, Slew, for the 457 super chat. Really appreciate it. Grit's making a great point here. Quinn should have known Jake Elliott was having a rough night. Take the lead, put the pressure on Jake. That's a great point. Elliott missed 2 field goals and an extra point, so there's no.
And by the way, you saw the confidence that it gave the Eagles when they stopped them on 4th down. What did they score? 2 plays?
Yeah.
Hurts had that, I think, first pass after the turnover, the stopping on downs.
Right to Goddard.
Maybe 2 plays later.
Yeah, Goddard fumbled. Recovered. And then Barkley scored a touchdown. Yeah. So.
The point is, I like the fact you used to see the great quarterbacks do that all the time after a turnover. Immediately go for the big play. Yeah. Because the defense is surprised that it's out there. They're a little bit shaken, and you get an opportunity to perhaps get people not concentrating on that. So I like that's the point in time where I like to see aggressive play, when you've got the opponent likely in a mental flat spot, a temporary mental flat spot, but still a flat spot, and you can take advantage of it.
Yeah. So bring up the other thing in this game, that 3-minute drill that Washington had down 16. It took forever for them to score, and they still had 2 timeouts left with 28 seconds. This is irresponsible. I was texting with Evan Daniel, our Tuesday, Evan, of course.
Sure.
Tuesday co-host. He he was complaining. He was like, running the ball again. Does Quinn know he's down 2 scores? And I texted maybe he thinks it's the third quarter. And then he said, how do you and I said, how did they only have 28 seconds left when they scored? I didn't realize it ran down all the way because I was keeping track of my DraftKings lineup.
Poor clock management.
Horrible.
I mean, unfortunately we see it way too often, and there should always be an assistant coach in charge of clock management, when to use timeout, when to accept a 5-yard penalty. If it's 2nd and 8 in the first quarter and it's a 3-0 game and you're running into delay of game, don't waste a timeout. Take the 5-yard penalty.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The timeout is much more valuable later in the game, later in the first half, whenever it might be, when time becomes critical. Time is not critical 5 minutes into the first quarter.
Yeah,
it is with 5 minutes left in the game and you're down by 10 points.
Yeah, as a mistake I see a lot of quarterbacks make is that they get a first down and then they rush to the line of scrimmage and then they do a play which takes a little bit longer, and usually the play is bad because they're all hurried and they don't know what's going on.
And they sometimes get an illegal procedure because not everybody gets set at the same time.
Exactly. So why not just spike the ball and then save yourself some time? Yeah, you lose the down, but you weren't going to do anything with that down anyway because usually those plays are ineffective. So yeah, that's something that's always bothered me. I love when they spike. John, good point. We're talking about a head coach that blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. So, yeah.
Well, he blew it only because he didn't punch out the offensive coordinator, who was very offensive in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
We've talked about Mr. Shanahan before.
Yeah, well, as someone who had the Patriots in that game, I was pretty happy about that result. So let's get into these.
Well, someone who had the overtime in that game was very happy as well because it was the first time.
Oh yeah.
So you go like 50-something Super Bowls with no overtime, and now you've had it twice, like in what 6-7 years. Yeah. Kind of like safeties. The big price, the minus 900 or minus 1,300 on will there be a safety, the no, and then it hits 3 years in a row, and people were laying the minus 1,300 for those 3 years because it rarely happens. So great. So you're laying 1,300 and you lose, and then you lose 2 more times. It'll now take you 39 years to get even.
That's a long time from now. So yeah. All right. So by 2063, here we go. So anyway, let's get to these Week 11 NFL picks. We begin with Packers at the Bears. The Packers are they open at 6. They're down to 5. So I've been waiting for some news on the Bears regarding their injuries because they were missing 2 tackles last week. Darnell Wright, Braxton Jones were both out, and we saw Caleb Williams take 9 sacks. They were both limited in practice, so not bad, but not great. You want to see them full. Maybe we can see them full on Friday. We'll see. Tevin Jenkins, by the way, DNP as well, but he's a guard. So I would like to see one of those tackles return fully, and then both of them play, or at least one of them play. I do like the Bears here to bounce back off that humiliating loss. They fired the coordinator. I feel like we're going to get a better effort from them. But if both
is there enough time for the offensive coordinator to implement his system?
No, but I think that. No, but I think you're going to have usually when a coach is fired and the players don't love the coach or anything, they're going to play harder because they don't want the finger pointed at them. We saw that last week with the Saints against the Falcons. And I think that's going to happen here. But like I said, I want to see one of these tackles play for me to bet the Bears. If they're both out, I have no interest. But if one of them returns, I like the Bears. If both of them return, I really like the Bears. So what are your thoughts on this game?
I like Green Bay in this game for a number of reasons, partially against Chicago and largely on Green Bay. First of all, Green Bay's 0-2 in the division with the loss to Detroit and the loss to Minnesota, both of which were at home. So this becomes an important game to not start 0-3 in the division. Okay, they are off their bye week, as I recall, losing to Detroit before the bye. Chicago, and I mentioned this at the time, they had 1, 2, or 3 in a row, and then the bye came at a bad time. They come back from the bye. They lose that game to, I think that was a Hail Mary game to Washington, and then the next 2 games, they played absolutely horribly, didn't score a touchdown in either of them. That made them change the coordinators. Caleb Williams was showing signs of progress, and I don't know whether it's other teams catching on or maybe just not being able to add more to the playbook for Caleb Williams, but he has not looked good in the last couple of games. Now he did have a decent statistical game against Washington. The Hail Mary cost them that game, but so that's not all that bad. The Packers, and I think I forget the exact numbers, but they have some outrageous record in Chicago going back, I think, 28 years or so. I mean, I think they're like 25 or 24-5 straight up in Chicago. Now, that has to be taken, and I always talk about context. In those 28 years, maybe 26 of them, Brett Favre was quarterback or Aaron Rodgers was quarterback for the Packers. And the Bears did not have much in the way of quarterbacks in any of those years. And, of course, you're talking about Favre, a Hall of Famer, and Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Famer. I like the fact that the Packers have been able to run the ball. The defense has been decent. I was on the Bears last week, and yes, I was aware of the tackles and all that. We talked about it. I know you like the Bears. I just felt it was an opportunity for them getting up against a New England team that still has issues. They didn't show it last week against stopping the run. Nonetheless, I think this is a good spot for the Packers. I like the overall talent better, and I think the Packers defense, at least using a lot of the measures, is a lot better than people think about or think of. Again, a good running game. Jordan Love feeling a little comfortable. It's about this time last year that he started his run. I don't think he feels the pressure to be the next Aaron Rodgers, the next Brett Favre. I think he's shown that he's certainly a capable quarterback. Whether he'll have that length of a career and a successful career remains to be seen. But this, I think, is a good spot for the Packers coming off that bye week. And you do have to wonder right now about the confidence level of the Bears. They can make excuses about injuries and things like that, but those injuries only go so far in explaining the total lack of, I'm not going to say effort, but the total lack of production we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, John talking about Williams missed some wide open throws. Not just that, like he stands alone, like he dances around the pocket too much. He took 9 sacks, so it wasn't on just the coordinator. It wasn't just the offensive line. It was him too. So there's a lot to fix here, but he's had some good games too, like that Jacksonville game in London. He had a great.
I wouldn't compare the Packers to the Jaguars.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm just saying he's played well. The Packers have really good defense here. I'm just saying that Williams has performed well at times this year. Yeah. But so the potential is there. I just think that this is a tough spot for him, especially if both tackles are not healthy. Yeah. So for me, it comes down to the tackle play. If they're both in, I think that's a nice edge for the Bears because the Packers get after the quarterback pretty heavily.
Well, the other thing though is interesting because if they are both in, might it make the Packers even more attractive because whatever line movement would probably go towards the Bears for that very reason.
Yeah, it already has.
In other words, you might being able to lay 4.5 or 5, with Green Bay instead, because even when fully healthy, I still think the Packers are the better team, and I think the line would probably be not much lower, if at all, than it is right now. Yeah, especially given their history of success.
Yeah, I think it already has moved. It was 6, and I think because the tackles practiced, or maybe
I think it's 5.5 now. I think I don't know if I've seen any 5s out there. Let me check in the meantime.
Yeah, it's 5 right now. There's 5s in several places. Superbook, South Point, Caesars, they all have 5 right now. Bookmaker has 5.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it looks like there is some money coming in on the Bears. I think it's because the tackles are practicing, but again, they're not fully practicing; they're limited, so they may not be 100%. So that is worrying. So I may not be on the game at all. If both tackles are out, then I will be on the Packers. But it really,
I'm showing 5 and 5.5 at least here in Vegas. Mostly 5.5 still, but some like Circa, which is a major book, is 5.5. Westgate. Mm-hmm. Not as major as it had been, is at 5, and I'm showing Pinnacle at 5.5 right now. Offshore.
Yeah. Well, you have your choice, so depending what you like.
And then, although let's also keep in mind, 5 is not a key number.
That's true.
But you'd still rather lay 5 than 5.5. I don't care how unkey a number is; you still want to lay the best number you can.
Yeah, I think you're 2% to land on 5, if I remember correctly. I think that's what it is. It's about games line between 3.5 and 5.5. Games land on 5, 2.16% of the time. So it's a very slight edge. You don't need to swear it out, but again, you would like to have it, as you said. All right, let's get to the next game. The Browns at the Saints. Saints are favored by 1. I've seen some pick'ems out there too. Injury news here: Lucas Patrick and Pete Werner have both missed practice both days. I love the Browns here. I think this is a great bounce back spot for them. They were embarrassed before their bye, so they've had 2 weeks to stew about that ugly loss to the Chargers, whereas the Saints, they're in the same spot the Browns were in against the Chargers. So the Browns are coming off their quote-unquote Super Bowl win against the Ravens. They're predictably flat the next week against a superior opponent. The Saints last week, they know they're out of it. They had their big win against their huge rival Atlanta. Upset win, and now you have a bad team coming off an upset win. I love to fade these situations. The Saints are certainly a bad team. They have so many injuries. I don't know how they mustered the energy, especially with an interim coach. Like, they're not going to be coached well, so they're going to be lacking the same sort of effort they had last week. And I think the Browns are the better team. If you take away quarterback and Derek Carr and Jameis Winston, I give the edge to Carr, but it's not like that bad.
It's not a huge edge,
right? And then running back, I give Kamara a big edge over Chubb right now because Chubb is coming off the torn ACL.
Yeah.
Outside of those two positions, I think the Browns are equal or better everywhere else. So I like the Browns here as slight underdog, but still, I think they win this game. Wouldn't surprise me at all if this is a blowout, if the Saints are flat off that win. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, the interim coach is playing for the head coaching job if he can turn this team around. It's not impossible, though extremely unlikely. And I do like the energy I saw last week out of the Saints against a division rival. Although, again, I think Atlanta is flawed. I think they, if I remember correctly, they went into the game last week with a plus 5 points differential. And what was it, a 3-point loss? So they're now plus 2. So it's a team that what are the Saints now? The Falcons, I think 6-3. But it's I won't say a bogus 6-4, but it's not a bogus 6-4. But it's not the kind of numbers that you would normally see from a 6-4 team. You'd normally see a little bit better as far as scoring goes in most situations. The situation in Cleveland, it seems as though all those distractions are behind him. Unfortunately, it took an injury to Watson to do that, but I think ultimately right now the right quarterback is finally getting a chance to play, to be a leader, and to not be looking over his shoulder as far as if he makes any mistakes. It's a good spot for Cleveland coming off of a bye week, so they've had plenty of time to prepare for the Saints. I still think we're going to see a good effort out of the Saints. Some of their players have been getting healthy. I think the line is appropriate because I think that on a neutral field, Cleveland probably is a 1 or 2 point favorite. But will it be on grass? Will it be on turf? This game's on turf, and I don't know how successful. I don't have it in front of me how successful the Browns have been on turf. So probably not a game I'm going to play. I would lean to the Saints, but I can understand if people are listening to this and they want to make a play. Your confidence in the Browns is stronger than my confidence in the Saints for this game.
Yeah, I definitely teasing the Browns if I can. If it's 1.5 going up to 7.5 is.
Yeah, I could see that absolutely.
Yeah, I think that definitely one of the obvious teaser legs here. I can't see the Saints with Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the number one receiver beating a good defensive team by 8 points or more. That would be very bizarre. Mike asking, Butker out today. Any lines change? It's still 2.5. I've seen some 2s out there, so half a line move, but I think that occurred before the injury news. So it didn't move the line at all. They could just find a backup kicker. Like, kickers are very replaceable. But for most teams, I guess it seems like some teams have just bad luck with kickers. But
are you talking about the Jets again?
The Jets, the Jets are certainly one of those teams. Actually, it's probably.
In fact, did I hear that Kansas City may have signed, I think, the Jets kicker from the practice squad? I thought I heard that this afternoon.
Did it?
Which makes me wonder if he's on the practice squad of a team that can't find a kicker. I'm not sure that's a good solution, but who knows? Watch him go out and kick a 57-yarder to win the game on Sunday.
Well, knowing the Jets' luck, that's probably going to happen. It almost has to happen.
I mean the backup kicker kicking for Kansas City, kicking the winning field goal, the guy from the Jets practice squad.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it takes to make fans feel sad, that's what's going to happen. Like that's what's been happening for decades now. So
Yeah.
we know it's going to occur. So, all right. Next game is Rams at the Patriots. Rams are -4.5. The only injury news I see here is Rob Havenstein, DMP in practice twice. So a little disappointing, but the Patriots don't have a good pass rush. They're 10th worst in pressure rate, even when accounting for that 9-sack performance against Caleb Williams. Again,
And they're trading. Oh, and they traded away one of their better defensive guys before the season. Or no,
right.
I think it was during the season. I think Caesar was on the way
Yeah, it was right before the season. Judon got traded
to
to
Atlanta.
Atlanta. So Judon actually playing very poorly this year.
Yeah.
So it's not like the Patriots lost anything, but still they're not getting up the quarterback that often, even when accounting for that 9-sack game. So I think the Rams are going to bounce back here off the Monday night loss. Some might point out as like this is a tough turnaround because the Rams had a home game on the West Coast on Monday night, and now they have to travel to the East Coast to play a 1:00 game. So that looks tough, but Sean McVay's actually been in this situation 4 times. He's 3-1 against the spread in these situations. And McVay in general, very good on the East Coast at 1:00 games, kind of like Kyle Shanahan and Jim Harbaugh. These guys have kind of mastered that, whereas some coaches in the past have been poor against it. I remember Mike Holmgren with the Seahawks. He had an abysmal track record in these 1:00 games, but I think it's a coach by coach basis here. And
Well, it's a coach by coach and also a team by team.
Right.
You know, the example I was used, and they used to, Chris Berman used to talk about it all the time on ESPN. Tampa Bay, they were like 2-33, and when the temperature below 30 degrees.
Right.
Well, they were 2-33 when the temperature was anything above 30 degrees. They were just a bad football team for like 25 years. So again, context. You can't be totally selective without at least presenting the context, because we tend to overemphasize some of the statistics that seem very. It's like Green Bay, like I said, with Green Bay's success against Chicago over the years at Chicago. Well, yeah, they had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that we'll talk. I think if I remember the reference, we'll talk about that in one of the upcoming games. But context that explains a lot of success.
Yeah, of course. You definitely have to look at that, and just and you can data mine any trend really, but I do think that you have to look at the context. And no, I like the Rams to bounce back here. The Patriots are a bad team coming off a win. That just screams automatic fade to me. And given that the Rams are coming up a loss, I think they bounce back. They need this game too, so they're going to be focused. So I'm on the Rams. Maybe in the Super Contest, we'll see. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I like either side in this game. My initial thought was to look towards New England a little bit in this game, because they have played well. Although, again, first-year coach showing improvement as the season goes on. The win over the Jets that they should have lost in the following game, and last week, of course, against Chicago, which was a dominating effort. Which I said earlier, probably says more about Chicago than it does about New England. I was on Miami Monday night. I had liked what I had seen in the game. Tua was rushing his first game back, but he played well in that last-second loss to the Cardinals. He played well in that last-second loss to Buffalo. So I thought he was feeling, back to almost full strength there. And certainly he didn't show any signs of it, because he actually made a tackle in the game, which may have been ill-advised, but nonetheless, he felt good about it. So this is not that was not a play against the Rams, because I'd been on the Rams several times this year, and I talked about before how they made a nice run to the playoffs. I just have some concerns about the Rams' ability to run the football, although New England has not been as effective against the run as they were very early in the season. It's probably a game I'm going to pass. I've looked at it several ways. The Rams have had some issues with pass defense. I know one of the reasons you liked Chicago last week was Drake May, and who's to know what he's going to do against the Rams defense that is not at an elite level, and he's getting more confidence. And as he gets more confidence, the players around him gain more confidence. So I can see the Patriots hanging around, and maybe the Rams get a late score to go from like a 3 to a 6 or a 3 to a 10-point win. But it's a game that I'd rather stay away from, because I like other games on the card better.
I did back off the Bears a little bit last week. Not nearly enough as I should have, but because of the tackle situation, I looked at the Our Lads depth chart before the game started, and I saw like a stream of red on the offensive line. I'm like, oh no, this is going to be bad. So yeah, I should have just not bet that game at all, but I did bet it a little.
No, and I didn't back off because I knew all those injuries. I just said the New England Patriots just have so many problems. They just don't have a lot of talent, and it was a good spot for the Bears to get healthy. Because again, the Bears are, at least were, they may still get back. They were at least somewhat in contention for a playoff spot, almost halfway through the season because of the early season success that they had enjoyed, and they were now playing arguably the second or third. Well, let's say Carolina, the Giants, and maybe you put the Patriots in there. Although the Patriots have played better, so maybe they moved up a little bit in our bottom five.
Yeah, I said this to Evan on Tuesday. I think you have to categorize. Like, if you look at the worst teams in the NFL, first half season and second half season, I think the first half of the season, the worst teams in the NFL are these young teams that are, they're lacking a lot of talent, or they're very, they just don't have a lot of cohesion. Like the Panthers, for example, Patriots. Like these were the worst teams in the NFL in the first half of the season. Now I think it's the veteran teams that have just severely disappointed and have injuries and have nothing to play for. Like Dallas, for example, Jacksonville. Yeah. Like these are now the worst teams.
Cincinnati possibly after this week.
I think as long as Burrow's healthy, same thing with the Jets. I think like as long as Rodgers is there, I think they can be competitive and cover the spread. But if at any point Rodgers gets hurt or Burrow gets hurt, then I think the bottom will fall out. And I think
I'm concerned about Cincinnati because of the defense.
They have a horrible defense. You're right.
Jets. Now, keep in mind the Jets defense, and I'm sure you probably have compared the Jets defense before and after the coaching change, and there's been a significant decline. And it makes sense because why do you name the coordinator of the best part of your team interim head coach and take away part of his responsibilities? 1 hour away to devote to head coaching responsibilities is 1 hour less that he's watching film, modifying techniques, drawing up plays for the defense. I mean, you talk about a dysfunctional franchise. They are the old Los Angeles Clippers of the current NFL.
They are. So let me ask you this question. Ever since Robert Saleh got fired, which team is the worst ranked team in EPA per play on defense? I should give it away.
Well, you're probably what I alluded to, the Jets.
The Jets, they are the worst defense EPA per play since Saleh got fired. That's amazing. It's amazing with all that talent. It's
well, and again, you're taking away the coach of the strength who was largely responsible. Saleh was a great defensive coordinator in San Francisco. He probably had talent, maybe a little better, but certainly not all that dissimilar from what he has at the Jets with the individual player talent that he has. And he brought in a guy he trusted in Ulrich and let him take care of it. And then the owner, I guess it must have been the owner's or Douglas's decision, somebody's decision, that, said, gee, this guy's been the most productive. He's probably going to be a good head coach. Let's give him the chance. No, the defense was not what was keeping you from what was not what that was keeping Robert Saleh from succeeding.
Yeah. Stanley asking, hey, Walt, who you got in the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight? I got Tyson winning first round TKO. I can't give you any.
Is that Mike Tyson or Tyson Chicken?
Yeah, for either way, he has Tyson first round TKO. I can't tell you. I don't follow this stuff. I know that the fight's going to happen. I'm not going to watch it, but Tyson's what, 60 something? Like, how's he win?
He's close to 60, I think. I think he's 58.
Okay, so are you betting this? Do you have any thoughts on this? I wish I had. I don't. Okay.
I suppose my strategy be, if I were Paul, is I would just run around and make and fatigue Tyson.
Yeah, like Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa tire out Apollo Creed. That's
rope-a-dope. The Ali rope-a-dope.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Let's get to the next game, which is Ravens at the Steelers. So I was looking to see if Kyle Hamilton was going to play. He was DNP on Wednesday, and then he was limited on Thursday. So trending in the right direction, but not a guarantee that he's going to be in. Alex Highsmith, DNP twice. His dad already announced that he's not going to play. His dad on Twitter said he's only going to be out a couple weeks. So he's on the injury report, but he's not going to play. But still, I like the Steelers here. I mentioned this on Tuesday, how the Steelers have built their team to combat Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson hasn't scored more than 24 against them. And I think if you look at last week's result, when you had Pittsburgh and Washington, Pittsburgh held Jaden Daniels to 5 rushing yards. They know how to battle these scrambling quarterbacks. And yeah, I mean, obviously Lamar Jackson is better than Daniels at this stage of Daniels' career. But still, I think that the Steelers will have a good game plan for him. And Baltimore's defense is ranked 30th in EPA. They can't stop the pass. They can't get after the quarterback. They leave the middle of the field wide open. I think with Russell Wilson being a passing upgrade over Justin Fields, that gives Pittsburgh an advantage. So I like the Steelers here. So who do you like in this game?
You mentioned a lot of the reasons why I really like Pittsburgh. I'll try and keep it simple, especially because of the series history. When Belichick retired last year, John Harbaugh became the longest tenured coach by 1 year over Mike Tomlin. I'm sorry, it was the other way around. Tomlin began in 2007. Harbaugh began in 2008. They've had 32 games, regular season games against each other. I think in the 32 games, 26 have been decided by 7 points or less. 18 have been decided by 3 points or less. 14 by exactly 3 points. And I realized that, and they've generally been low-scoring games. And you're right. You mentioned what Tomlin has done against Lamar Jackson, what the team has done in the past. And I've had a long-standing rule when these two teams play. When the line is +3 or higher, or maybe even a little lower, take the points, regardless of whether you're on the home underdog or the road underdog. The tendency to play these low-scoring games, I think it goes back even further. I think someone said today it's about 50% of their games going back like into the 90s, even before these coaches have been decided by 3 points or less. It's just a natural rivalry. And again, the fact that these guys have been coaching 16, 17 years against each other, play each other twice a year, there really are very few secrets between the two. Now, part of Pittsburgh's success I mentioned before when I talked about one of the other games there with context is similar to Green Bay. A lot of the times that Tomlin has been coaching against Harbaugh, Ben Roethlisberger was the quarterback. Again, a likely future Hall of Famer. At the same time, he's been gone, 6 or 7 years now? So, maybe not quite that long, but 5 years, let's say. And they're still having success against them. So I like Pittsburgh to win this game. It's an important game for several teams here because Pittsburgh does have a lead over Baltimore in the division, and Baltimore has a 1-game lead over Buffalo, which we'll talk about shortly. And all of these things could come down to seeding and possible home field advantage should these teams meet in the playoffs. There are a lot of importance that we start to think about at this time of the year. I like the fact that you pointed out the unbalanced defense of Baltimore. They will have some success throwing the ball. They may occasionally try the running game with Najee just to give the receivers some time to catch their breath. But they should not have much success against that Raven rushing defense, but they should have success passing the ball. We might see a couple of trick plays in there designed to catch the defenders out of position. But I like the way this Pittsburgh team is playing. They showed it again last week when they fell behind in Washington and managed to, again, play enough good defense in the second half of the game to allow the Steelers to come back and get the win. And interesting enough, and I'm sure you heard the story with Mike Williams catching that touchdown pass. And on his, I think it was Instagram or Twitter feed, he hashtag redline, which was the criticism from Aaron Rodgers that got him cut.
Right. It's funny how that works out where Devontae Adams runs bad routes and then Rodgers it's a great playing with him. And then Mike Williams runs one red route, and then it's like, you got to go. And it's funny that way.
Aaron Rodgers has never forced a pass.
No.
Into coverage.
Of course not. Is this the top play for you? Steelers?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Chris saying Wilson's due for 5 interception game. People who don't watch the games.
Yeah, no. I think he's talking about Zach Wilson, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah. Even though he hasn't played, of course he's due for it. But no, I do think Russell Wilson will implode at some point. I don't think it'll be against the 30th ranked defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Eventually he will, though.
And again, this is part of the brilliance of Pittsburgh. We've seen Justin Fields is capable in that offense. So they are in one of those really good positions where if you have an experienced quarterback who's your current starter and he goes down or whatever, you've got a capable backup with experience behind him, who also has the ability to run.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's get to the next game. We have Raiders at the Dolphins. We mentioned the Dolphins a little bit earlier. You said you like them Monday night. They come back here as a favorite of 7. It was 7.5, and then it was announced that Gardner Minshew was going to play. That dropped the line to 7. A couple of injury notes here. Kendall Fuller for the Dolphins suffered concussion. He's DNP twice. For the Raiders, Nate Hobbs and Andre James DNP twice as well. Some people may not know Nate Hobbs. He's the Raiders' best corner. And the Raiders secondary has already been bad, and now you have to go against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle without your best corner potentially. That's going to be pretty problematic. And the Raiders are no strangers to injuries. They've had a lot of injuries this year. It's kind of derailed their season. Plus the Devontae Adams trade made their offense worse. I don't want to back this Raiders team at all. One of the worst teams in the NFL. But they do have a tendency to backdoor. They did it against Rams, did it against Chiefs. I feel like they could do it against the Dolphins, who have been limited offensively. The Dolphins won Monday night, but they only generated, I believe it was 238 yards of offense. So I'm not going to be rushing to the window to bet a -7 on a team that just produced 238 net yards of offense. So I am leaning Miami still, despite the backdoor possibilities, but I'm not going to bet this game. Do you have a strong lean here?
Raiders are coming off of a bye week. That might be a little bit of an edge, but they didn't do much, and they still can't run the football. Looking at the basic numbers, 32nd and last, averaging 77 rushing yards per game. That's less than 20 yards per quarter. That's not going to get you very many touchdowns when you do that. When you're constantly in situations where you're like 3rd and 7 and forced to pass. And the Miami defense hasn't been terrible this year. Actually, if you look at their yardage, their raw numbers, their yardage numbers, they're like, what are they? 10th in the they allow barely over 300 yards per game, which is pretty good. Raiders actually aren't as bad as you might think. They're number 15 at 325. Both teams have been better. Well, Miami's been more balanced, defending the number 12 against the rush, number 8 against the pass. The Raiders 22 against the rush, so Miami should have a little bit of success because they're a top 10 running offense as far as the basic metric goes. But the other thing also that I see here is that the Raiders have only they've turned it over 19 times this year. They've only forced 5, so that's a -14 in turnover margin. Miami's not great, but they're better than -19. They're -3. Because both of those defenses have not forced turnovers. And again, I expect Tua to continue to get better. Let's see what happens with Tyreek Hill and his wrist as far as that goes. Didn't seem to affect them all that much last week. And Gardner Minshew, is that a significant enough to cause a train? He's experienced, but he has not been as good of a backup now forced into start as perhaps the Raiders thought they were getting based upon his performance with the Colts last year.
Yeah.
So I'm with Miami here.
Yeah, Chris says full bye week versus short week bad scheduling. Yeah, they need to do that a lot. They either have that or the teams off Thursday playing teams off Monday games.
And Miami also, like the Rams, going across country.
Right. Yeah. So rough spot.
But you see, the Dolphins, I think it's going to be a very energized fan base as well, because I think of all the teams that have struggled. We talked about 2-win teams last week, 3-win teams now. I think Miami has a real chance of maybe getting that final wild card. The schedule: they play the Jets twice. They've got this game against the Raiders. They play the Panthers. And I forget who else is on the schedule. I think they do host San Francisco at some point. But I think the Dolphins have a real chance. And they've already played Buffalo twice. Oh, and they got another game against New England. So I think the Dolphins, this could be a confidence building win if they can, 10 to 14 points. It's the Raiders, but it's still if they can get a 2-score win, I think that augurs good things going forward for them, especially with that schedule.
And they might get the Jets when the Jets quit, rather than when the Jets are trying. So it's
Did you say when they quit or when they click?
when they quit. I don't see them
Okay.
clicking. When they quit, I don't. It might be very favorable, as opposed to the Jets trying earlier in the season and still not winning, but still, my as long as the Dolphins avoid good teams, they can win these games. They usually beat up on these bad teams, but again, they are limited a little bit. Tyreek Hill is banged up, so not sure what's going on there. All right, so Jaguars at the Lions. I already bet this one. I bet the Lions at minus 13.5. The Lions at 14. I wanted to avoid a 14.5 because the fourth most likely result of any NFL game is 14.
Yep.
So it's a key number. So I wanted to get ahead of that. So we got minus 13.5, minus 110 at ESPN bet. So I like Detroit a lot here. I don't see how the Jaguars contend with Mac Jones. Yeah, Mac Jones against a top 12 defense, which is just asking for trouble. Last week, the Jaguars covered the spread somehow, but they had 143 net yards of offense. They scored on the first drive, and then they did nothing after that. I don't see them doing much here. And Detroit's been a bully. They've beaten up on these bad teams. Like they demolished Tennessee. Tennessee's better than Jacksonville. So I don't really see how this one's close. And Detroit doesn't really have much to look ahead to. They have the Colts next week. And if you're wondering, how teams have done coming back from a 16 plus point deficit at halftime the following week, it's about 500. It's like 16, 17-1 against the spread. So nothing to worry about there. The only injury here is Sam Laporta, DNP twice, but he's been banged up anyway, so not too concerned. Plus, they get Jameson Williams in his second game back, so might just be a wash. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, and it is a significant step down in class, playing at Houston as they did last week, and playing now at home. That's it's maybe a two-step drop down as opposed to a three-step drop down if they were playing, a Baltimore or a Kansas City or a Buffalo, and now going to Jacksonville. I can't play this game with such a large number, but if I had to, I could only go with Detroit. Although we have seen times where Detroit has been unable to, and I guess the best example, well, two examples, I guess. The best example would be that loss to Tampa Bay, where they think they outgained them like 415 to 415 to like 245 or something, and they lost 20-16 at home back in week 2. But Tampa Bay is a much better team than Jacksonville as well, so maybe shouldn't read all that much. And again, that's almost half a season ago. So I think there are better games that I'll be interested in. But if I was in a contest that required you to pick all 15 games against the spread, I'd pick Detroit in this one.
Yeah, that Tampa team was healthy. They had Evans, they had Godwin. They had all their players. They blew out the Eagles 2 weeks later.
And I think they gave Detroit a tough game last year in the playoffs, didn't they?
Yeah, it was close for a while. Detroit ended up covering, but yeah, it was close for a while. And they demolished Washington week 1. That Tampa team was hot to start the year, and then they faded because of their injuries. So much different game, plus revenge game for the playoffs. So I think Tampa was more energized. Detroit made a lot of mistakes in that game. So they could screw up in the red zone again. They could fumble inside at the goal line or whatever. That could happen. But
Campbell could also, I think, impress upon them, hey, you guys were fortunate last week to get the win. You can't make those mistakes. You can't waste opportunities. And he's an aggressive coach, and the players respond to him. So I think the word this week will be focus.
Yeah, I think so. So I think is there a prop on Mac Jones taking a safety? So we were talking about bad beats before we started recording. That was a bad beat last. I don't know if you remember that game last year. It was the Raiders Patriots. The Patriots were covering the +3. I think it was a 1 point or it was a 2 point game. It was like 19-17 or something. And Mac Jones on the final play of the game took a safety to lose. That was certainly a bad beat. It's just so horrible.
Yes, that would qualify.
Yeah. John Pastrana asked, Pittsburgh's offense has been so good. Do you smoke when you watch these games? The offensive numbers prove it. No, the offense has been good. I don't expect it to continue. I don't expect Russell Wilson to continue to play well.
I see Pittsburgh's in one of those rare situations where the offense doesn't really have to be good because the defense takes care of so much. That puts less pressure on the offense. Okay, if we go 3-and-out, our defense is more likely than not, let's say, to hold them than say other defenses, and that makes a huge difference when a defense has confidence in its offense and vice versa.
Yeah,
and most teams don't have two really good units.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's 14th in offensive EPA, so they're right in the middle of the pack. They've looked good at times, but I don't expect it to continue. Like Russell Wilson's going to implode at some point. Again, not this week, but eventually I think he will. All right, let's get to the next game. Vikings at the Titans. So, here we go again. I took the Vikings last week. Now it won the Super Contest because it was -4.5.
Lost in circuit because it moved it with Thursday morning when the news came out about Lawrence.
Right. So it moved to 7, unfortunately. So I had 7 in real life, 7 -105, and that didn't cover, even though Minnesota outgained Jacksonville in that game. It was I believe it was it was 402 to 143.
Well, the 143 doesn't matter. It's the 422 that translated into just 12 points. That's the concern.
Right, exactly. It was 2 interceptions into the end zone. It was another interception about at the 27-yard line. And there was a 4th interception that was called back by penalty. Just a brutal game for Sam Darnold.
And he's had a number of those after that very hot start. And maybe I don't know, maybe you just have so many good games at that level that all your vulnerabilities that had been covered up early on become more evident.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been 2 games in a row now. However, he did get off to a hot start, and he is coached well. And he has Justin Jefferson, and Tennessee is going to be down their top 2 corners again. So I think there's a chance for him to bounce back. I think there will be regression to the mean here for him. But I do think he's going to implode eventually, kind of like Russell Wilson. However, I think this is a good spot for them to bounce back. They just had such an convincing victory. And Tennessee is just a very bad team with Will Levis. And I love this matchup for Minnesota's defense against Will Levis. Will Levis is awful against the blitz. And Minnesota blitzes at the highest clip in the NFL. So I'm all over the Vikings. Who do you like here?
I'm not sure I really care much for this game. Maybe under the total because Tennessee has played decent pass defense, and Darnold. They scored 12 and 20. They 20 and 21, I think, the last 3 games after lighting it up for the first 4 or 5 games. So maybe the Tennessee defense will make Minnesota gain a lot of their yardage on the ground, which will eat up clock, lessen the number of possessions. So maybe I look under. I'd like to make a case for Tennessee because of their defense and they're catching a Minnesota team that's not been effective. But my numbers also show that Minnesota might even be a little lower price than they should be. But the current form could also explain why the price is a little bit lower than I would have expected.
Yeah, Darnold. I think the Christian Darrisaw injury really affected him. Now they got Cam Robinson, but he's okay, but he's no Darrisaw. Let's see, Johnny is saying the Steelers offense scored 7 points in each quarter versus the Skins. 7 came. One of the 7s came off special teams, so it's really in 3 quarters, which is it's a good performance. It's not great, it's good. And I expect.
What's the average points per game in this season this year? I think it's about is it like 23 or something? Average total points is like 46.
It's a good question. Let's see.
Let's see if I have that somewhere here.
I don't know if that's going to show here. It's Killer Sports used to be so much. Okay.
20 average total points in the game this year, I think, is right around 45.
Yeah, 44.9. I'm seeing average total. Yeah. So, yeah.
So Steelers, what are they averaging? Steelers are averaging.
Well, with Russell Wilson, I wonder what that is exactly. So yeah, I mean, again, they have been better with Russell Wilson.
23.9, allowing 16.2. So
yeah, and so he's played 3 games? 37-15 against the Jets, 26-18 against the Giants. That was not a great performance. Yeah. And then 28-27 against Washington, but again, 7 of those points came on special teams. So
and they had the 37 against the Jets. That comeback.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the time that looked great, but now we've seen the Jets just not be able to stop anyone. And again, they've allowed the most yards per play ever since Saleh got fired. Will Levis going against the elite defense is a disaster. Yeah, I think Levis is going to implode in this game. I'm going to bet his over half interceptions, as we've done all year. It actually lost last week. Somehow he didn't throw an interception last week. I think he's going to bounce back.
What was it? What was their time of possession last week? Couldn't have been very much.
No, they had a garbage time.
So
They actually dropped the Chargers dropped an interception. I was so angry.
No.
So yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, so we have the final early game here. As time changed, they moved off of Sunday Night Football. Thankfully, Colts and Jets. I thought this line move was funny. It was 4. Then it was announced that Anthony Richardson was going to start, and then the line moved to 3.5. And then I guess people remembered that Richardson's terrible, so they moved it back to 4. Yeah, Devontae Adams DNP twice, so look out for that. He might be out, but I don't know how you back the Jets here. Like, so I say this like I don't see how you back the Jets because they didn't try hard last week. Like, there's zero effort. It just seems like this team is just done, and they're so poorly coached. However, man, I don't like Richardson is just so bad. I don't like this either. I have the Jets penciled in for cover. I just can't figure this game out. Do you have a lean here? I can't get this one.
No, I mean I can't play the Jets. I mean they lost outright as a favorite to New England on the road. They lost out as a favorite in Pittsburgh on the road. Last week they lost out as a favorite to Arizona on the road. Mm-hmm. Their 1-point spread cover as a favorite was the Thursday night game against Houston. And, there was national TV audience and, the hyped up crowd and everything. Maybe that had a little to do with it. Houston had been playing well, so maybe a little bit of a drop-off wasn't all that much of a surprise. So now they're at home and they're a favorite again. And Indianapolis last week with that 10-point loss to Buffalo, first time all year they had a game decided by more than one score. So they continue to play close games. I can't back the Jets until I see some signs of life in that team. It seems with, and again, you talk about the receivers, or I talked about the receivers and the issues that they've had, and Rodgers, throwing Williams under the bus basically and getting the team getting rid of him. There just seems to be some internal turmoil. I think it's really that the entire team is frustrated. Sauce Gardner had a horrible game last week, and on the defense, Indianapolis at least seems to be together for whatever that counts for. And maybe they won't ask Richardson to do too much. Again, it's a game that I am almost certain not to play. But again, if I'm forced to pick a game in a contest or something, or someone gives me $110 and say you gotta bet one side in the game, I'll take the points.
Yeah, that makes sense. Grit's saying maybe the team will rally around Richardson. I would say maybe, but he checked himself out of the game in his final start. So I don't like. How do you rally around that? I don't know. Maybe they will. I don't know. It's such a mess.
Was it him who said that he needed that he benefited from the 2 games that he didn't play? Was that Richardson or one of the other quarterbacks who had been having issues? I read that quote the other day.
Yeah, that's not familiar. I didn't see that quote at all. So I guess I just missed it, but maybe it was him. I mean, it can't be worse. So we'll see. Dale asking, what are your 5-unit picks? So Cleveland, we discussed the Rams. Jaguars are the Lions are close. And then there's one more. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it yet. So there will be one toward the end. Let's see here.
I don't know what game it is, but I think we're going to be on opposite sides.
Okay.
If it's the game I'm thinking of.
Okay. I don't even know. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. So let's get to the late game. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Have you ever, maybe you're an old school gamer, have you ever played Mega Man 2? I'm guessing no, because we've had,
no.
Who knows? Okay. All right.
Not sure what that. What is that? Is that a video game or?
Yeah, that's a Nintendo game from back in the day. So our Saturday co-host Tom is he used to be a Mega Man speedrunner, which means he would play Mega Man, try to beat the world record, and try to beat it. And so I was going to talk to him about this. They did a playoff bracket between the eight robots. So I was just wondering, like, I didn't
Can
want
you
to,
bet it?
no, unfortunately, the video is already out there. You would know the
Oh,
results.
okay.
It would be cool to bet. Actually, it's very matchup based. Like these robots. There's one robot which is terrible. He'd be an underdog against any of the others. It would be fun to bet that actually. So
He'd be like
maybe
the
I'll.
Carolina Panthers for the first 6-7 games.
That's actually a good idea. I'm gonna make lines for Tom, and I'm gonna see if he can guess it. So that'll be fun. So we're gonna do that at the end of Saturday's episode. We're gonna look at that. Anyway, let's get to the late afternoon games. We have Seahawks at the 49ers. Seahawks are 6.5 point underdogs. San Francisco. A couple of major players who haven't practiced. Nick Bosa DMP twice. However, he was also DMP twice last week, and he played. Kittle was DMP then limited. I saw that Kyle Shanahan said he wasn't concerned about his injury, so I assume he's just going to play. I can't be on San Francisco here because the red zone offense is so terrible. They're 28th, and their kicker situation, Jake Moody is just missing everything. So I do think San Francisco, obviously the better team. If they were clicking on all cylinders right now, or firing on all cylinders, like I think I would be on them. But I think that. I feel like they're going to win this game by between 3 and 6 points and just not get the cover once again. Like they haven't covered these high spreads for most of the year. They did on Thursday night against Seattle, but that was as an advantage for San Francisco because it was a better team on a short week. But they don't have that edge this time, and in fact, Seattle has the edge with the bye. But San Francisco's dominated Seattle, so I don't take Seattle either. So I'm leaning San Francisco. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm leaning San Francisco. Also, I want to see if we get a better, more out of McCaffrey this week. Now that he's had a game in the contact under his belt, and they could be able to do a few things more as far as the offense goes with him back in there. Geno Smith has had a decent year. I was looking initially over the total in this game. I'd probably be on the side of the 49ers because, again, I just think they have more ways that they can do things on offense. I'm aware of the kicking issues and certainly the red zone issues, but I think they can have some success as they did in the earlier matchup against Seattle. So don't know that I will play it. It certainly seems that what's the current number? 6.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good teaser candidate. Maybe with the Houston Texans or one of the other favorites in that range. But I probably that's probably not going to be the one that I'm going to play.
Okay.
If I did anything right now, I am looking over the total because I do think the 49ers have some vulnerabilities, and I think Geno Smith can, exploit them, but have success.
If he does, DFS purchases, I look toward Tyler Lockett. The Niners have been bad against number 2 receivers this year, so it's something to look forward to. Chris, I forgot to read this. Couldn't nonstop runs by Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, be effective, minimize mistakes against the talented secondary, and expose the Jets' bad run defense and tackling? Yeah, I think so. I think they have a good edge there, and it's like the Jets' secondary has not even played that well. Like they have a talented secondary, but Sauce Gardner has been so bad. And so, yeah, I mean, but still, yeah, I think you're right. Like you want to run as much as possible, and that could be an edge here for the Colts for sure. But it's not like the Colts have a good defense either.
And I was going to say, and then maybe even look, the total is reasonable to go over at 44.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I mean, the Jets are known for being a good defensive team, but they're not. So yeah, I think you're right about that. All right, let's get to the second of the 3 late afternoon games. Falcons at the Broncos. This line is creeping up a little bit. It's up to 2.5. It was 1.5 earlier. I'm not going to bet this one I'm not going to bet either side, but I think this is a great teaser candidate. Falcons from 2.5 to 8.5. I don't really see Bo Nix beating this Atlanta team by 9 or more. Like, I agree with what you said earlier. Like Atlanta, kind of like a bit of a paper tiger right now because their defense is so bad, but they can score a lot. And if they fall behind, they can rally and get a backdoor cover from the 8.5. So that's where I'm looking in this game. Otherwise, I really don't see much. The only injury here for Atlanta, Mike Hughes, their top cornerback, or the top cornerback outside of AJ Terrell, limited, and then DMP. So downgrade, never good. So he could be out. But it's not like Denver has the the firepower to take advantage of that. So who do you like in this game? Because I really don't like either side.
No, I like Denver for a number of reasons. They were playing really well after a rough start to the season, and that's to be expected with a rookie quarterback. And we know what Peyton can do with quarterbacks. Although obviously it was a bad fit with Russell Wilson the last couple of years, but nonetheless, well, certainly last year. I like what I've seen out of Denver. The way they improved, they had that little mini winning streak. Or 4 out of 5 or something like that in the middle part of this of what's been played so far, and then they go to Baltimore and they get blown out as they stepped up in class, 41-10, and that was exposed a little bit. Not that anyone was all that surprised because they were stepping up in class. I mean, previously the best team they had played, they beat Pittsburgh in week. No, they lost to Pittsburgh week 2 of the season, and then they lost to the Chargers, the other good team that they faced up until this point. But I like the way they came back against Kansas City. Yeah, the way the game ended, but coming off of let's put Baltimore and Kansas City in the elite category of teams. So in back-to-back weeks, you get blown out and you shake it off, and you're back on the road again, and you put in a great effort and almost knock off the unbeaten team. In fact, I wonder what their probability of winning was when they lined up for that last field goal. It was probably what was it, about a 40-something yard field goal? That got blocked.
I think it was low 40s. Yeah,
it was probably, there were probably let's say 80-85% chance of winning the game there. So, normally you think that something like that might be a reason to hang your heads. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that it says after we got trashed by Baltimore, we came back and nearly knocked off our division rival, the only unbeaten team in the league, and 99 out of 100 times, the field goal's not blocked, and it's probably made about 85% of the time. So I like that aspect of it because this is a team that is in contention for making a wild card in the AFC. There are a whole bunch of teams that are behind the number 7 spot right now. I think that maybe Denver holds the number 7 spot. I don't have the standings in front of me, but they're right there in the race. I think they do because I think they got 5 wins. I think Cincinnati is first team out with 4, something like that. So I do like Denver in this spot. I don't know how the altitude will affect the Falcons. They only get to play there once every 4 years, and actually I think it's once every 8 years because you probably, I think the way the scheduling goes, you host them 1 year and then 4 years later it's to the other venue, but I'm not positive of that. And again, I think Denver, especially with their defense, which has been real solid all year, it's been again, I mean, I don't know that you could say it's a great feat in holding Kansas City to as few points as they did because Kansas City's not been explosive, but it's still below their average this year. So I think there's a real good spot for Denver laying under a field goal. I'm not going to disagree with Atlanta on the teaser because Atlanta is if you put teams in categories A, B, C, Atlanta's probably in the B category, pretty much like Denver is. And usually when I've got 2 B teams playing each other, obviously you have to look at the individual teams, but that's a game where I generally prefer the home team, especially the home team with the better defense.
Okay, yeah. AI bringing this up. Cousins has been bad against the blitz this season, ranking 33rd in adjusted completion rate. Knicks will have all this time to throw. Yeah, I mean, he brings up the blitz. Denver blitz is at the 4th highest rate in the NFL. So yeah, you could be on to something there. It's a good matchup edge. So yeah, maybe Denver is the right side for sure. But I think the play here for me is the Atlanta teaser up to 8.5. Even if Cousins is a bad matchup, like he could come back at the end and score a touchdown.
Yeah, and Denver's not a high-scoring team.
Right.
So
exactly.
teasers are, getting plus 6 points added to 6.5 or 7, whatever you play, added to the line for a team that does not score all that as much. Let me see what Denver is scoring this year, just out of curiosity, because I mean there are some special, defensive numbers involved as well, but I do believe they're below average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, as you looked that up, Kim McNeil asking, is there a report on his sore throwing arm for Cousins? He was limited Wednesday, and then he was practicing fully on Thursday. So I guess not much of a worry there. But again, you always anytime a player is unexpectedly on the injury report, I guess you have to look at it. But yeah, I'm not like too worried about it though.
Denver is averaging 21.2 points per game. So
okay.
a point below the league average. But on the other hand, they're only allowing 14.3 points per game, which, well, I don't have the ranking numbers in front of me, but I know that it's real close. Miami is allowing 15, which I think is a bit surprising. I think the Chargers, Chargers are allowing 10 points per game.
Yeah, Chargers defense has been terrific.
And Pittsburgh's at a little over 16.
I think the Eagles should be up there as well after the bye. First 4 weeks they were a mess, but yeah, 16, 30, 16
even for the year even at the year they're still allowing only 17 per game, which is 4 points the average point scored.
Yeah, the only team that scored more than 18 against them since the bye was Jacksonville, week 9, and that was a lot of garbage time there. So yeah, Sue says Atlanta only one game beaten by more than 5, which was 34-14 against Seattle. That was a game where they were very flat. They had to look at they had some sort of look ahead in that game. I believe it was let's see.
About Atlanta?
Yeah, when Atlanta lost to Seattle 34-14 at home. Yeah, the next week they had Tampa, so that was their big look ahead game. So and plus they were coming off a blowout wins, so I think they were a little
against Carolina.
Yeah, they're unfocused in the game. All right, so we have the big game of the week: Chiefs at the Bills. The Bills are -2.5 or 2. It's gone down a half a point in some sports books. So if you like Buffalo, you get the -2. I really struggle on this one. So for me, it's like if you take the Chiefs, you get Patrick Mahomes as an underdog, and like Patrick Mahomes as an underdog has a great track record. Any elite quarterback when he gets,
and he did it again this year at San Francisco.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, again, anytime you can get an elite quarterback, with points, like you almost have to take it. However, Buffalo's had Kansas City's number in the regular season. The Bills are 3-0 against the spread and straight up against Kansas City in the regular season. Now they lose to them in the playoffs, but still, that's not the playoffs yet. Like the Bills, I feel like they built their team to beat the Chiefs, and they've had success against them in the regular season. So yeah, the Chiefs are 9-0, and the public is all over them. It's like, yeah, of course, you get the Chiefs 9-0. All they have to do is win, or even lose by 1 or 2, and you get the win. It just seems so easy. But I feel like the Bills have good advantages here, especially if Dalton Kincaid plays. We don't know yet if he's going to play. He was DNP twice, so we'll see. But the Chiefs have been so bad against tight ends and number 2 receivers. The Bills probably getting Amari Cooper back is a big deal because that means Khalil Shakir is going to see easier coverage. And Josh Allen's going to run a lot more. Like he hasn't run that much this year compared to past years. But I feel like he's been saving his legs. He actually ran a lot last week too, so I think he's getting revved up to run a lot in the second half of the season. And I mean, this is just a big game for Buffalo. I think that you can argue that they're the right side, but again, I don't want to fade Mahomes, so I will just be staying away from this one. I'm not even going to tease Kansas City up because I do think there's a really good chance the Chiefs win, but I think if the Chiefs lose, it could get ugly. We saw one game they had against the Bills. I think it was in 2022, I want to say, or 2021. The Bills smoked them. The Bills won by 18 or so. So I don't know. I'm staying away from this one. How do you feel about this game?
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I thought that this might be the game that you had a strong opinion on, especially since you said it was late and it was coming up towards the end and we're down towards the end. But that was not it because I was going to say that I thought I'd be against you on that one if it was this one because I thought you might be on the Chiefs, and I am very much on Buffalo in this spot. You touched upon a few things, including the great record that Kansas City with Mahomes has as an underdog. Yeah, okay, 14-1-1 ATS as an underdog. Yeah, exactly. The one loss was as a home underdog in 2022. Buffalo was actually a road favorite of 2.5 points, and they beat them 24-20 in that game. So that was the one that was in that one before this year. And I think you sort of touched upon the other thing with the series history here. The last 6 meetings, they've all been with Mahomes and Allen. 3-3.
Yeah.
Buffalo's 3 wins have all been in the regular season. Kansas City's 3 wins have all been in the playoffs. So that's gives Buffalo a little bit of confidence. And again, think about where this Kansas City team It's not as good as the team that was last year offensively, which was not as good as the team that the years before that. Okay. Um, the defense is still very solid under Spagnuolo, and that's been the strength again this year. If Kansas City is going to lose a game this year, okay, where is it likely to be? A, on the road, B, against a quality football team that likely will be a playoff team, and they might, if it's in the AFC, that they would have to play in the playoffs. Okay, when you look at Kansas City's schedule, the only realistic games that I give them a chance, I suppose they could lose at home to their Chargers, but they'll be, favored in that one. They were favored 7 on the road, so I don't know. They'll be probably at least 7 points in the rematch. Everything staying the same. Don't think they could. I don't think they would lose at Cleveland. Houston might give them a battle at home, maybe at Pittsburgh, but I still think Kansas City has too much for Pittsburgh. And then maybe, ironically enough, they end the season in a rematch at Denver. Yep. So I think that this really is the most realistic chance that the Kansas City Chiefs have of losing a game. And they've come close this year. The game against Atlanta, the game against Baltimore, the game last week, obviously. And I think there may have been one other one that I think they were involved in, the Cincinnati game. Okay. So Buffalo is the kind of team that has the offense and the defense, I think, to deal Buffalo a loss and to deal Kansas City a loss, excuse me. And the other thought that I have with the concern that I may have with Allen is that after, 6 or 7 games he went without an interception. Mm-hmm. He's now thrown at least one interception in each of his last 3 games, including 2 last week. But he's going up against a pretty good defense. But I just think that there's enough for me to support Buffalo in this spot. And I sort of alluded to when talking about the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. Buffalo already lost to Baltimore, so they would lose out on tiebreakers. They have a 1-game lead right now, so they can control that to a certain extent if they keep winning. At the same time, a win over Kansas City would put them 1 win behind Kansas City with the tiebreaker because they only have 2 losses. And if Kansas City somehow, once they get that first loss, somehow loses the steps up again, and again, there are some teams that can't beat them. All of a sudden, Buffalo finds itself with a realistic opportunity for the number 1 seed. Now, if they lose this week, not only the number 1 seed is gone, probably a chance that the number 2 seed is gone because then they would be tied with Baltimore in losses, assuming Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, which they may know the result because Pittsburgh-Baltimore is earlier. And then all of a sudden they're talking about the number 3 seed, which would give them a home game in the wild card round. But assuming the number 2 seed wins in the wild card round, they would be on the road in the next game, playing at either the number 1 or number 2 seed if they seeded 3. Well, they won't. I don't think they'd be seeded 4th. I think they'd be 3 if they didn't get ahead of Baltimore.
Well, I would love to see Kansas City lose this game. I bet the Eagles to have the best record in the NFL at 18-1 before the season. So I would love to get that bet correct. But I don't think they'll have the best. I think it could be a dead heat tie with the Chiefs and the Eagles, hopefully. But yeah, I'll still take it. Obviously, it'd be a nice payout still.
Yeah, by the way, I was reading the wrong chart before. Denver's actually averaging 19.7 points per game. Okay. The Chargers are allowing 13.1. I was looking at a chart I have that shows what the teams that are playing their opponents against common opponents have done this year. The numbers aren't all that different, but they're not the ones that I cited before.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the Sunday night game, the flexed in game. Bengals at the Chargers. This line is Chargers -1.5. And I was talking about this with Evan on Tuesday, where I thought that this line was too short, which kind of ruined the value I was hoping to get with the Bengals. So I think that the people are just undervaluing the Chargers. The defense is incredible. They're so well coached. Justin Herbert's healthy. He was dealing with an injury early in the year.
And they're designing more planes for him that he's familiar with the receivers and the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Quentin Johnston's coming on. He's like the new Chris Carter. All he does is catch touchdowns. This Charger team is really good. And so I was hoping that they would be, 3-point favorites here. And then I could take the Bengals with Joe Burrow coming off a loss.
No home field advantage.
Yeah, and I was hoping that to get a great quarterback coming off a loss. That's one of my favorite angles. Joe Burrow coming off a loss in his career, as long as he's not favored by more than a touchdown. He is 18. Actually, no, overall he's 18-7 against the spread off a loss. If you look at all the great quarterbacks, they generally have a record of that sort. So I mean, again, this is one of my favorite angles, and I was hoping to get +3, but we're not. We're getting +1.5. So I do still like Cincinnati, and I do envision teasing them up to 7.5. And I will bet them for a little bit, but not as much as I thought I would. So Cincinnati here for medium-sized play. What are your thoughts on this game?
Despite all the talent, here are the teams that Cincinnati has defeated this year: Carolina, the Giants, Cleveland, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Who have they lost to? Baltimore, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, a good team now, Kansas City on the road in that tight game again, and the inexplicable loss to open the season against New England. We keep making excuses for Cincinnati. The most talented team. T. Higgins not in there. Well, that's a vulnerability. You got to deal with it. I continue to like the Chargers. They're playing great defense. The offense is coming together. This is the kind, and again, and I think I mention it every week, and I'd be surprised if I missed a week, but I might have. You went from one of the worst coaches in the last 24 years or 25 years to one of the best. And that was reflected in the fact that, I think 6 or 7 games that the Chargers lost by like 3 points or less last year to finish 5-12. They could easily have been 12-5. I don't know that they could get to 12-5 this year, but they're certainly on a nice head start. Laying under a field goal, I keep thinking almost every week, this is a spot against a decent team. They had 2 chances against Baltimore, and they came up short both times. And again, it's been the defense that has let that team down. The Chargers don't have a great defense or haven't shown so far, but it's getting better. I'm not going to be on Cincinnati, although I do agree with the teaser part. That is one thing that I will have. I will have Cincinnati teased up. But as far as the game itself goes, I'm likely going to end up playing the Chargers. I don't know if I will, but it's the only side I would play.
Yeah, like I said, I wish we were getting +3. And then, I feel like Chargers winning by 3 probably the most likely result of this game. So at least you get the push there. But, a +1.5 is not as appealing. And I do agree. I mean, the Chargers are just such a good team. It's such a big difference that Jim Harbaugh is there over Brandon Staley, who was just a disaster.
The average team on offense, let's say, averages 60 plays per game. Okay, you like 60 plays on offense and 60 plays on defense, and maybe a dozen plays make the difference in the game when it's all said and done. A dozen out of the 120, and usually the plays that make a difference, there are going to be mistakes made. And I just think Cincinnati has a larger capacity of making those mistakes than do the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Chargers win these close games now. The Bengals lose these close games. Like you mentioned, the teams they lost to, they could have beaten the Chiefs if Burrow didn't fumble. They had the ball in overtime against the Ravens the first time. They had double-digit leads against both the Ravens in both games. These are games they easily could have won, and they lost. And it's just the coaching, it's the bad defense, and it just. They just find ways to lose. Chargers find ways to win now with Harbaugh.
You keep playing the do theory, and it doesn't work. After the first time, it's do. Right. Because it's the third time. It's the old thing. I'm not going to quite go in far and say it's insanity. The old saying where you expect something to change after something's been occurring at the same time and think you're going to get a different result. That's the definition of insanity. I guess it also goes along, trying to guess when a losing streak or a winning streak is going to end. People say, well, I will continue. This is the week that they're going to lose. Well, maybe not. And they say, there's only, if you keep betting on a team after they started to win, you can only lose once, but you can win several times until you lose. Or going the other way, when you're playing against a team, there's only so many times you can lose by them covering, and that's that at the end of the streak. Trying to get, now, I am aware of streaks, but I don't factor it in. It's nice to know that they're playing well, but I don't use a streak as a reason for being on or against the team.
Yeah. By the way, did you know that Albert Einstein, when he said that quote about insanity, he was talking about agriculture? Most people don't know that. That's very funny. All right, so now we get to the big game of the week. Forget what I said about Chiefs Bills. This is the big one. Just because this is going to be such a comedy show. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna make fun of the Cowboys all night. It's gonna be wonderful.
You know what?
Texans,
So I'm going to interrupt you just for a second because this is a
yeah.
perfect example. I'd love to see a sports book, and maybe there's some out there because they can be very innovative, that they would pay you like a maybe like 3-1 or 5. I don't know what the odds are for a team to cover the full game line in each half.
Wow, that'd
So
be
like
nice.
laying
Yeah.
Dallas minus or laying Houston in the first half and in the second half, and you get paid a little extra. It's
Yeah, you
one
could, I
bet.
mean,
It's not a par. It's effect. It's kind of like a parlay, but you would get paid, like a nice price based upon taking much the worst of it for each half.
yeah, I mean, you could probably do alt line first half. I don't know if they offer that, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, you could do alt line Houston minus 13.5 or 14, or I guess it would be
yeah,
15
but
in this
I don't
case.
think they'd let you parlay that to the full game. What I'm
No,
suggesting is sort of the same thing, but it's a predetermined that it's almost like a proposition that if you bet a total, and let's say instead of laying 110, you laid 120, you
mhm.
get paid like plus 150 rather than the minus 110 to 100 if one team goes over that total by themselves.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see. But again, you could also do the alt line, and I would have interest in that too.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of curious what the alt line is now. The alt line for Houston minus here it is minus 13.5 is plus 165.
That
Um,
seems very short.
yeah, minus 16.5 is plus 240. So you could do that, I guess. But
Yeah.
at any rate, I do love the Texans. Nico Collins limited in practice, so
This is
that
right.
was
This is
ahead.
probably as much as you love the Eagles last week against the Cowboys, because I know you were
Yeah.
really
Yep.
up on them last week in
Yep.
similar stadium.
Yeah. As I said earlier, the first half worst teams are those young teams. Now Dallas is arguably the worst team in the NFL. I know they got Parsons back, but they still can't stop the run. And yet, despite Parsons being there, their pass rush isn't that good because outside of Parsons, they can't get to the quarterback. Overshown got hurt last week. They're missing multiple cornerbacks. As I said, horrible run defense. And Houston, what does Houston love to do? They run at the highest clip in the NFL on first and second down. They're going to ram the ball down Dallas's throat. Joe Mixon's going to have a great game. And Dallas's quarterback situation is just abysmal. It's going to be either Cooper Rush or Trey Lance. I assume they're both going to play at various points in this game against DeMeco Ryans and Houston's defense, which is top 10. Anytime you get a backup quarterback against the top 10 defense, you have to fade that. It's just a great situation to fade them. It doesn't even matter what the line is, unless it's like absurd, like above 14. But here, 7.5 is very doable. Especially Houston's coming off 2 consecutive losses, especially with that blown lead against Detroit. I feel like they're going to be trying hard to cure, because if they lose, they fall to 6-5. Plus, this is a in-state rivalry. They want to take it to Dallas, of course. So I really don't see how this game is close. I know you said, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, you can make a case for any team. I can't make a case for Dallas. I can't fathom a way this game is going to be close unless there's weird fumbles. If Houston gets to the red zone a lot, they keep fumbling. Yeah, that could happen. It's just bad luck at that point. But as long as Houston doesn't have these weird turnovers, I really don't see how this one's close. Like, this is a desperate team, almost a desperate team that's getting their best receiver back against probably the worst team in the NFL and a horribly coached team at that. So I think Houston wins this one running away. I think this is going to be 21+ win. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, this is another one I talked about earlier. Houston in a teaser with one of the teams, or several of the teams in multiple teasers on Sunday. The only negative for Houston is the sack vulnerability. And again, you pointed out Dallas may not be able to take advantage of that, but Houston's quarterback averages 3.5, being sacked 3.5 times per game. Average yards lost is just under 8 yards per sack. So they're giving up basically about 27 yards per game due to yardage lost on sacks. That might be the difference between 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 11, meaning that there'd be one less possession or two less possessions that Houston has to score to increase the margin. That's about the only thing. But again, you'd have to rely on Dallas, being interested for full 60 minutes, especially if they fall behind. I just don't like laying points on the road because Houston would be satisfied with a 23-20 win.
Yeah, I think I would think so in most cases, but I just think that their disdain for Dallas, plus coming off multiple losses, I think.
Oh, the thing I'm going to mention about that. Is it the players that really hate Dallas because they're in the different conferences? Now the fan base is totally different, and I think a lot of people. First of all, these guys all have the same agents, and they all go from team to team. So I think the media likes to make it a rivalry, but it's between. I think it's more between the fans than it is the players. I mean, you ask the player, "Oh, do you want to really get to Dallas?" "Oh yeah, we want to beat the Cowboys." Well, you want to beat every team on your schedule, but you're playing into what the media wants. So I think sometimes now this used to be different years ago before free agency, and players spent the majority, if not all of their careers with the same organization, before we started seeing all the free movement. Now, of course, you also have the agents in there, and you have agents representing, I used the expression before, they represent athletes on competing teams all the time. And the expression I said before, the phrase in the past that I've said is, look at how many of these bitter enemies on the football field end up playing in each other's golf tournaments during the off season.
Yeah, you're right. I always think back to, I don't know if you saw the movie Basketball, which is released about 20 years ago. They made fun of all the free agency moves, like going crazy, where this one guy was doing a press conference, and he's like, "I'm so glad to be a member of the Bengals." And the guy next to him was like, "You're a member of the Browns?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be a member of the Browns."
Yeah.
So,
well, that's basically it. I think that the rivalries are intense amongst the fan bases and maybe even the media, though I don't think really the media. I think the media likes to drum up the rivalry aspect of it, but I think often that for the most part they might not care all that much about the hatred that the teams have. But the players, I mean, look at it. You go out there and you hate the Cowboys, you want to beat them by 50, and then they embrace each other after the game.
That's true. Yeah, they swap their jerseys.
Yeah,
see that's so annoying.
Yeah,
the one thing I would not like to see.
You go back to the 1960s. Yeah, Ray Nitschke hated the Bears. Dick Butkus hated the Packers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's gotten a lot different. You're right. I mean, these guys are all pals now. There are some players who hate other players in the league, but it's pretty rare. All right, so I mean, the Texans are the other the 5-unit bet Dale, as you asked earlier. So but I'm definitely gonna be teasing this one as well. So my top 3 teaser teams: Atlanta from 2.5 to 8.5, Bengals from 1.5 to 7.5, and Houston from 7.5 to 1.5. I'm gonna be teasing all 3, and then try maybe middling the Cincinnati game / Chargers, but I don't care about the middle here. Again, I think this is going to be a rout. Mike said basketball.
Which game? You think it's going to be which one?
I think Houston's going to be a rout. I don't.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you said you were going to say Chargers and Bengals.
Oh no, I think that's going to be a 3-point game either way. I just don't know which one. Mike says Basketball is a funny movie. Only saw it once. Just see again. I watched that when it released like 10 times. Such a funny movie. They basically, the premise of the movie, they made fun of how, like I said, these players going all over the place. And so the fans lost interest in this. And so they stopped watching professional sports. And professional sports went away. And so these two guys, they started their own professional sport called basketball. They combined baseball and basketball. It's a really funny movie. You should check it out sometime.
I don't know what the premise is. Is that game played by using a bat to hit a basketball or by trying to throw a baseball into a hoop?
You throw a basketball into a hoop, but based on where you shoot it from, it counts as a base. So like if it's like a short shot, it's like a single. If you shoot like from half court, it's a home run. So they basically did that way. But you could taunt the other team. It's like the pitcher from the other team would basically be someone who taunted the guy shooting the ball. So it's not like you're just shooting a free throw or something by yourself. It's someone just like doing these absurd things to you to like make you lose your focus. It's really, really good movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but when it was released,
and if somebody takes the baseball and runs away with it, that's called a stolen base.
Exactly right. So no, that was I urge anyone who hasn't seen that. It was released 20 years ago. I urge you guys to watch this. Good. All right, Andy. I guess that's about it for this week. Loved having this conversation with you. We agreed on some. We disagreed on some, which is great because if we agreed on everything, then it would be pretty boring. And if we disagreed on everything, people would be like, oh,
If we disagree on everything, we'd confuse everybody.
right, exactly. Yeah, you want a sweet spot in the
Nice
middle.
balance.
So right, I think we got that. So any final thoughts, or do you want to plug your site, thelogicalapproach.com?
I do have the weekly stats up there again. I'm trying to get them. I didn't quite get them up there on Tuesday. I think I got them yesterday this week, but I did put them up. Try to get them up on Tuesday for those who play those Tuesday night college games because they are pro and college stats up there. And there's some unique ones up there. I especially like that X factor at the very end, and I explain it down below, and I think I've explained it before. That's an attempt to correlate. I call it like a measure of efficiency and inefficiency. Plus numbers mean a team is efficient, and negative numbers mean they are inefficient. And it's a simplistic explanation, but it basically correlates yards gained and how that translates into points. You would think that a team that ranks first in gaining yards would also rank first in scoring points. Obviously, there are defensive and special team points that would make that, but it also shows that if you're leading the league in yards gained and you're like eighth in points scored, you're not being very efficient. On the other hand, if you're first in fewest points allowed and you're eighth in yards allowed, that means you're being very efficient because you're giving up more yards, but they're not scoring on those yards because you're ranking so well in the points allowed. So it's just a little added handicapping thing that when I write it up in the newsletter each year, it's called explaining the inexplainable. It's sort of like a way of taking a look at the poor third down conversion rates, penalties, special teams and defensive touchdowns, turnovers, and putting that all into one number that sort of explains why there's not a more direct correlation between what the goal is to score points, and the way you accomplish that is gaining yards. So it sort of explains how efficient it is with the yards you're gaining. It's kind of like the game last week with Detroit and Houston, where they scored 52 points and gained 225 yards. That's going to result in excellent efficiency because of the fact that it didn't take many yards to score the 52 points. Why was that? Because the defense contributed, or the special teams contributed to a number of those points that they were able to put on the board. All of which, special teams is often a very difficult concept to really quantify. And one thing I also, yards per play. I would also think that if you want to use it, or yards per point, I guess some people use, which I've never really thought of as being a great measure. But if you're going to use yards per play or yards per point, maybe we should also include kick return and punt return yardage and interception and fumble return yardage, because those are all yards that benefit the offense without the offense having done anything to get that benefit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to go into with that, and it's hard to quantify some of this stuff. Man, it feels like last week I mentioned the only loss I had in one of my super contest entries was San Francisco against Tampa, where the kicker missed 3 extra points. Three field goals. Plus San Francisco had a muff punt that turned into a quick touchdown for Tampa.
You can't handicap that.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's very difficult to do that. So.
Yeah, that's the problem with power rating sometimes. Let's say a team is 5 points better than some other team. Well, let's use 7 points, because you don't score points in 5s in football. You score them in 7s. 3 6s and usually 7s. Okay, as far as that goes with 6s, and that's so you say, well, okay, the Rams are 6 points better than the Seahawks, but that's generally based upon averages. Meaning that if Seattle plays its average game and the Rams play its average game, the Rams should win by 6. But you very rarely play an average game. You usually play a game that's above an average or below average. And actually, one of the things I like to look at when using at power ratings sometimes and evaluating point spreads is medians when evaluating final scores. In other words, let's say a team, scores 20, 20, 20, 20, and 40. So they scored 100 points in 5 games. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the average would be 25 points. no, 20, 20, 20, 40, 80,
Yeah,
120, 24 points. But the median is 20 because you scored that 4 times. Medians work better when you have an odd number and they're all different because the median is basically the number, let's say 5 numbers. 2 numbers are higher, 2 numbers are lower. The median is the one in the middle. It helps to deflate some of the issues that you have with averages because, again, 20, 20, 20, 20, and 40. Well, 20 is more representative, but the average is 24. The median would be more reflective. And, in a sport where you play so few games, that sometimes medians will give you a better idea where, one outstandingly great or outstandingly bad performance will affect the average. It won't affect the median.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, again, it's a lot of stuff that goes into this. So you guys definitely check out thelogicalapproach.com. You get all these stats from Andy. And then we'll be back on Saturday talking with Tom with our final thoughts. We'll have the final injury report, so we'll be able to tell who's going to play and who's out. So definitely looking forward to that. Plus, again, we'll have Tom's thoughts on the Mega Man 2 tournament. So we'll do that at the end of that show. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. Andy, love doing the show with you once again. Looking forward to next week as well. And I hope everyone listening to this has a great week of betting. And let's pick up where we left off here on Thursday night with hitting our same game parlay and having a great Sunday. So everyone, just good luck with your bets, and I will talk to you on Saturday.